Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth, or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. So Sattology builds your identity, mythology destroys your identity, and you'll be today's, you will know who is a guest here. So the Vedic time calculation is subatomic, and you'll be shocked to know how. We'll prove that today also, because what you see from your eyes is just Trisareno. That is the group of six anu, six atoms, and which is very clearly described is when you see through your window the particles of sun which moves up in the light. That is the Trisareno which you see from the eye, and that's what the modern time calculation considers that as the atom, but we don't. We are going. We That is a six times the atom size combined, and so we'll learn more. And from my good friend and Rishi, Muni, Tapasvi, and Acharya, and also a great teacher in a logical way. So let us welcome Sri Nilesh Oak.
Namaskar, Aditya ji, and let's talk about time today.
Oh, this is an amazing thing because time is conspicuous by its absence for many people right now. So one thing comes in the mind is like we always talk about atomic clocks, and there is no atomic in the atomic clocks according to me, because they also have a variation of couple of seconds after couple of 100,000 years, they say something like that. So so how does the see without and after writing my last book, without yoga you cannot see the subtleties of the nature, including your own mind. Without yoga you
Hmm.
can't see that. And the
Hmm.
entire yoga science is built on transcending the mind, like going beyond the mind by not treating as so important many
Hmm.
times. So what is your view on the time calculation, and also which is explained in Bhagavad Puran in much detail
Yes,
by Kapila Muni Devahuti?
correct. Yeah, so very important subject, and the context of Patanjali that you mentioned, some of these things cannot be taught. Like the basic structure you may understand, but otherwise, some of these things are to be understood with your own efforts. And that's why this whole dhyana dharana samadhi and combined together the sanyam is important, because it takes take few simple quantities, and if you ask anyone they will say, oh yeah, I know what that is. Let's begin with time, for example. But time, mass, temperature, like what is temperature, everyone says, yeah, we deal with temperature all the time, high temperature, low temperature. Mass, like everyone knows, more quantity of food being eaten versus less quantity, and so on. um, Motion, okay, time, and we energy and atoms, and we assume that we know these things. What is surprising is, and I don't know if I have mentioned this on your show, but I do tell people in my lectures and whatnot, and that is based on my experience. This is going back 30 plus years when I was doing my master's in Canada, and I was researching many of these subjects. And one time, Dr. Ravi Gomatam mentioned it to me, and I did not believe him when he said that. He said, think of mass and motion and time and this and light. Light is another one, by the way. What is light? Literally the light. Is it a wave or a particle? That's the dilemma there. Time, what is it? I mean, everyone talks of time, everyone thinks they know time, and in a way they are not wrong because it's an experiential thing. But uh, it's a mystery at certain level, at any level it's a mystery, because you say, okay, so tell me the time, and the person will not able to do it. Or before creation, was there a time? Like even in science, like Big Bang, they will say, oh, before Big Bang there was no time. And what do you mean? I mean, the clock is running somewhere, right? It gets totally puzzling and mysterious. We are going to look at the time definition, and the foundation of this time definition. So I would like to share. So I don't know if I answered your question, but so the Patanjali's yoga process is required to understand this at an intrinsic level individually. Like, you can learn only so much from listening to other person or listening to a book. Like, that experiential thing has to come internally. That is my point. But yeah, if you want to add something, and then I'll start sharing, or do you want me to start sharing?
Yeah, you can start sharing, but I can
Okay.
share.
Okay,
So
please.
the
Go ahead.
the uh, the Patanjali mentions in
Hmm.
the Samadhi Parva,
Hmm.
and he says, actually Vibhuti Parva
Hmm.
says, Chana Chana Tat Kramayo Sanyama Dvi Divivekajam Jnanam.
Hmm.
The Sanyam on Shana is 1.62 seconds,
Hmm.
and its sequence and continuity results in knowledge. With
Yeah.
Vivek,
How,
we
yeah, which means what? Now, of course, there would be a lot of a good meaning behind it, which only can be understood through practice. But another thing is Vivek. I mean, I'm going to interpret this in a one particular way.
Vibhuti Yoga.
Vivek, huh?
Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti
Vibhuti,
Path. Vibhuti Path.
yeah, that is a third.
That is the third path. Yeah.
Third path, yeah. And the last one is a Kaivalya path, right?
Kevalam.
Samadhi path, sadhana path, and vibhuti, yeah. And so what I'm going to say is that Viveka is, of course, it can be cultivated, but my experience interacting with people is either you have it or you don't have it. Therefore, I'm going to say, it's like it takes a fraction of a second, in the sense either you have it or you don't have it. Of course, with cultivation, it can come. But this is real, right? Say, think of this. If somebody reads that and the person doesn't have the background of other knowledge required to study Yoga Sutra, or doesn't have understanding of who Patanjali is, the person is just going to go and say, okay, I don't understand it, some rubbish written, something like this. Okay, what is now something similar? Einstein did the experiment. I have discussed that, so I'll not go into it. But what is time? I mean, that really, when you go to the epistemological level, ontological level, epistemological in the sense philosophical understanding of it, ontological in the sense of can you prove it, it gets very challenging, very interesting. And in that context, I mean, feel free to add again, but what I want to discuss, and I'm thinking of starting this as a series also, the majesty and the mystery of Indian astronomy. And briefly, very briefly, but that should be sufficient also, not that we need to extend this discussion on a time, but measuring time, where it comes from, what is the foundation, as
You know,
opposed to, yeah, go ahead.
before you start off, because
Yeah,
you must have done the same thing because we are all speaking from the same source generally. So the Anu, Parmanu,
yeah,
Sereno, and Truti. See,
yeah,
they are talking about the atoms, time taken for atoms to merge.
correct.
That becomes so Triserenu, time taken for three Triserenu to merge is called
Ye-
1 by 1687.5 seconds.
correct.
Seconds. So
Yes.
Veda is 100 Truti,
Yeah.
and love. So then love becomes 0.18 seconds. Nimesh becomes 0.54 second. Shana becomes 1.62 second.
Yeah.
Kashtha becomes 8.1 seconds. Lagu becomes 121.5 second.
Correct.
Nadika or Danda becomes, and names can be different. Sometimes Nadika is a different name also.
Gati, nadi becomes gati,
But
vigati becomes vinadi, and so on and
correct.
so forth. Yeah.
And the time taken to merge 15 Lagu is 1822.5 second. And
Yeah.
Murtha is time taken to merge two Danda or two Nadika, which is 3645 second.
Yeah.
6 or 7 dandas make 1/4 of the day or night, which is exactly 3.03 hours.
Yes.
So right from Anu to to danda, exact calculation. Like
Right. And then the fact that, which one was that 6 or 7 nadika, right?
yes,
Do
uh,
you know why?
uh,
See, that is so beautiful,
yeah,
right? Some correction to the prahar or whatever that unit is there. The
right.
3 hour, what is that 3 hour unit?
Uh,
3 hours
six or
corresponds to
seven danda make up 3.03 hours.
the 3 hours, which is a prahar, which will
Prahar,
be called a prahar,
prahar,
right? For
correct.
example.
Yes.
And the names do vary. But the point is, it says 6 or 7 danda. Now people, actually, I have given, this is from, are you pulling this from Bhagavad Puran? Like
Bhagavad
a
Puran.
Skanda 3 or 5,
Skanda 3. Can
Skanda 3, chapter 5, something
chapter
like
5
that, right?
something. That's right.
Yeah. Now, this is what I have quoted in the context of how India is the origin, and it is there in our astronomy text, Surya Siddhanta, it is there in Aryabhatiya. India, the innovation of the 7-day sequence is Indian, and you and me have done a program on that. Okay, but the point I want to mention is that 6 or 7, whatever danda or nadika, whatever you are saying, refer it to that 3-hour period prahara. Why 6 or 7? Because 6 will perfectly work at the equator.
Correct.
The Indian astronomy is equatorial astronomy,
Tutorial astronomy.
but India itself is not on the equator. So
Yes.
you have to make a correction for that. That is actually suggested through that 6 or 7. Okay. But the people who have so little or non existent knowledge of astronomy, okay, have turned into trolls and done or have written all kinds of stupidity, and I'm thankful to them. When time permits, finally I'm going to pull that stupidity and use that to educate our folks. But yeah, it's so beautiful. In fact, that's exactly what I'm going to present. But instead of going to exactly the same thing, but instead of going to Bhagavad Puran in this case, I'm going to use it from Surya Siddhanta,
Yes.
and without making it complicated, not going into too many details. Uh,
The same shlokas are in Surya Siddhanta also. Same
Yes. Oh, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
copy.
without going into the details for a reason, so that it becomes accessible to everyone.
Correct.
And those people who are interested into going deeper, they will go anyways. I mean, the idea is that they go there. I mean, all you and me are doing it, so not so that they watch our program. I mean, that's all fine. But it encourages them to go to the original text.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
like what you are publishing. That did you have to show your book not as a marketing, but as a what you were just reading from.
Yes.
Okay, you have to hold it closer, and so people, and hold it steady so people can see that. Okay, so yeah, what is it, transcending
Mind.
the mind. Okay, and Yoga Sutra as it is. Okay, excellent, thank you. Okay, I am going to show another book, by the way, but not my book. This the some of the write up that I have taken, it is so beautifully, crisply, and nicely written, from article of my good friend, um, Dr. Anil Narayananji, and we are working on a few things together. Of course, he works there. I work on multiple other things, so that it will take its time. But for example, this is the second book he has written. I'll just hold it. So the history of Indian astronomy. Okay, and within that, the specific subject, you can say, or specific subject is like a the Tirvalur tables. Okay, so the history of Indian astronomy, the Tirvalur tables by Anil Narayanan ji, and it's available on Amazon. Now, this is not a marketing of the book. It doesn't need a marketing, and it is not for every Dick and Harry. It is written in a very simple style. In fact, the French individual. Now, I'm not very good with French names, but I'll say Le Jontel, something like that. Spelling would be like the French le. It's like a le and le in between le. And then Jontil. Gentiles or something like that. He was stationed in Pondicherry because it was a French colony. And he came in contact with the locals. He came in contact, meaning he wanted to learn Indian astronomy. There was already enough. This is like 18th century, mid 18th century, late 18th century, 1760s, something like that. There was already tremendous fascination about Indian astronomy in Europe, especially in France, but other countries also. British just wanted to plunder. French, in a way, did the same thing, but I'm saying French at least showed appreciation. British not only plundered, British even did a double whammy. They plundered it and also said this is very trivial and not useful, while they are depending on it. Just like our Ivy League schools like Harvard has done that nonsense with the Indian narratives. The Brown University late Professor David Pingree, okay, I mean, utterly nonsensical claim that Indian astronomy came from Greek astronomy. And why? Because some Ivy League professor says it. Okay. And no proof. And I have questioned them. I have asked even some of the very simple claims of his, because he's no longer there, to his students who continue to write such nonsensical stuff. I have asked them, his student, who is a professor here in physics astronomy department, asked for a debate. The lady does not even respond to the emails. Okay, but that's not a subject today. Let's talk about the great Indian cycles of time. And so the notes I'm using are from one of the article, not from the book, but it's also in the book by Dr. Anil Narayanji. He's a former ISRO scientist, now works in America as a consultant. The great Indian cycle of time. So all that you showed is exactly what I'm going to show, by the way. I think, yeah, I have that. Okay. So the universe runs in cycles of time, small, medium, big, huge, and immense. We know that. Okay. This fundamental concept is at the root of Indian cosmology. Now, people will say, oh, what's different? What's new? The new thing for people is, people would agree with that. The new thing for people is, the Western Europe understood it from Indian astronomy and Indian cosmology. Aditya, that is the news that not many people know. And even when told, forget about the Western audience. They say, hey, I never heard this before. But what is the excuse of the so-called Indian educated folks on paper, with the paper certificates? They have access. They can reasonably go to a text like Aryabhatiya or Surya Siddhanta, Vedanga Jyotisha, and even many, Parashara Tantra, and so on, and verify for themselves. Bruhat Samhita of Varahamir. No, they are so lazy, they will not do it. But they will also not accept. So, nase jnana, nase shraddha, samshay, nasala pura, adnyascha, ashraddha, dhanascha, samshayatma vinashyati is their problem. They don't have a shraddha, they don't have a knowledge, and full of doubts. Why? Because nobody taught them to be any other way. But if a non-Indian tells them something, then the doubt vanishes, no matter what kind of junk is being fed to them. See, that is the tragical situation right now of all age groups in India, by the way. But let me stop my vent on that and get back to the subject. Okay. Starting at the lower end of the time scale, the one that you just discussed, the smallest unit found in Indian astronomy is in the microsecond range. And as you said, millionth of a second, as you said, the things change. If you, what you just read from Bhagavad Puran, if you convert that, the lowest comes to like a 0.00057 or 53 of a second. So millionth of a second, that's what is being referred to, called Truti and whatnot. Sometime, as you said, the names will change. And somebody has to ask, and not, that is the mystery. We don't necessarily know, with our knowledge of ancient Indian civilization, what was their motivation for going down to that scale, what kind of experiments they were doing at that scale. The only thing we can do the comparison today is, like what is that, European ECERN, or whatever that name is, European lab in Switzerland or wherever, right, for high particle collision kind of research they do, the looking for a boson after Bose, by the way, the God particle and so on, that kind of study. That's where this millionth of a second comes into the picture. Okay. So what kind of experiment these people were doing? And you know what? People will say, oh, where the reactor? Where is the collision center in ancient India? Just it's unbelievable. The ancient experiments, of course, there may be physical experiments, at least we have not found any, but Patanjali Yoga Sutra is something that what you just wrote, the commentary on, or the translation, is something that every human being around the world should read. There you start seeing the experiments, and I will not say I'm an expert in it. I mean, I'm familiar with the text. I do some meditation, but I'm nowhere close to many other folks who are there. And I've been totally fascinated with some of their experiences. Anyway, so we can go to that millionth of a second, and what that beautiful. After this, I will go and reread what you just read. That in that kshana, you get a Vivek or whatever that you just read there. So that is that second. I will briefly talk about this definition. You already said it. Trasa Renu, that is the word used in Bhagavatam, right? Trasa Renu, like for three of those, the word is Renu, but it's actually referring to particles like Parmanus kind of thing. They coming together, the time required is that Truti, like the 0.00057 and so on. Absolutely. From this remarkably small scale, and the time period builds up step by step to milliseconds, seconds, minutes, and hours, 24 hours. Then there is a different type of hour. Now, I'm just using the word hour so that the global audience understands it. The word, you already used it as a ghati or nadi. And as you said, sometimes the words change. So people cannot just like a, what you call, what is the yojana, like the measure of a distance. Yojana, every yojana is not the same. Yojana has just like a gallon. There is a US gallon, UK gallon, standard gallon. There are different measurements for a yojana. We see that in astronomy. Okay, Aryabhatta does it slightly different than Bhaskaracharya and so on. So people have to be careful. So yes, that changes, but there is a different type of hour. And Aditya, I will do one one episode on this, showing something fascinating, beyond fascinating. Again, we can do this in this series of the magic and the mystery of Indian astronomy, but let's stick to time today. But going further now to hours, but there is a different kind of hour, if we can call it, which I want to say Ghati and Vigati. Vigati is like a think of seconds and minutes type of thing, or called Vinadi and Nadi. So Nadi is like equivalent to Ghati, and then Vigati is equivalent to Vinadi. Okay, we may or may not have a time, but briefly I will refer to it. But then you go to a 24-hour day, then you go to 30-day month, then 12 months a year. Now, do we stop? Well, for most of the other civilization, there was no thinking beyond this. In fact, the reference to Shata, like, putting together as a unit of 100 years in Greece and Rome came very late. I mean, the Greece, Rome are late. They were talking only 2,500 years ago, maybe max 3,000 years ago, and that's it. Even if you take, now they're trying to push their glory back. But if you go to like 1600 BC, we are still talking 4,000 years. And you're going to see what periods we are talking here. Anyways, but we don't stop at the Indian system, very ancient system, thousands of years old, Surya Siddhanta, just based on some of the work that has been explored by likes of me, likes of Rupa Bhattiji, likes of Anil Narayananji, and many others, takes us to 40,000 years in antiquity. And we don't know how far back we have to go because it's not been explored yet, not been studied, and not been analyzed. But let's go with that. So proceeding further, now 360 human years. Where does this 360 comes from? Because 360 degrees, okay? Or that's how the length of the year was assumed. Again, why 360 degree? Guys, we can go in as much detail as we want, and therefore, Aditya, I said I'll stay at a very high level. But I'll just mention where does that 360 comes from, the degree comes from. It is the average of a lunar year and a solar year, the duration. If you look at the solar year duration, that's just crudely speaking 365 days, and some more actually, right? 0.2478. And if you look at the length of the lunar year, it is 354 days, 29.53 times 12. Okay. So there is that gap of 10 days. So you think of this as a plus minus around what? Around 360. That's how. So it's a truly lunisolar. As a mean position, they took the length of the year as 360 days. Now, taking this and extending and calling it the Dew Varsha, or the year of gods. Why is it done? It's exactly done for the same reasons. For example, if you're talking the height of a human being, we may talk in terms of centimeters or inches. Now, if you want to talk about if you have to talk about the distance between, say, Atlanta and San Diego, we don't talk in inches, although it can be discussed in inches. But that is not very relevant, or it's not very useful in somebody giving an idea. There we use kilometers, there we use miles. Okay, that's why these units are made, and we'll see the significance of it. And then 12,000 of these divine years, the years of God, okay, make a Mahayuga, great age, 4.32 million years. Now, these are all mathematical computations of time so that we understand astronomy. And why do we want to understand astronomy? Because now see how that comes and completes a circle. Because astronomy is time. Okay, so we study astronomy using time so that we can use astronomy for time. So that that Advaita, if you want to call it, that is what this is. So 4.32 million years. Why just take a random number? There is nothing random. In fact, Adityaji, do you know what title you can give for this session of ours? You can call it the origin or the foundation of millions and billions. How about that? Call it like a foundation or the origin of million and a billion. And I will end today's discussion with two slides on the etymology of a million and etymology of a billion. Okay. Very, very important. Culturally, civilizational development, philosophically, we have to understand this. And why is this important? Again, just like I said, the late professor of exact sciences, by the way, from Brown University, David Pingree, very without any basis. Okay. I mean, what kind of academia is this? Without basis claiming that Indian astronomy came from a Greek astronomy, I'm going to show the fallacy and futility of that useless claim. Okay, just taking time. I have already shown it with a Kritika Prachodisho no Chavante from Shatapatha Brahmana. I have shown in 10 different ways, and I would love to debate it with his student if they dare to do this. I would love to do this as an open debate, by the way, on camera, uncut, unedited. They just don't even respond. They are in academia. They do not dare respond. Of course, their argument will be, oh, this guy is a trivial guy somewhere. Why should I respond? Well, I am saying that is a faulty claim. There is no basis whatsoever. Okay. Hitchens' razors applies. A claim made without evidence should be dismissed without evidence. Yes, I have dismissed it. Now, don't you have some pride about what you have studied and what you are claiming, what you are pretending, what you are writing in your books? I mean, what kind of academic integrity is that? Anyways, so 12,000 of these divine years makes a Mahayuga. Is this a random number? Like, oh, just for a glory, multiply by 12,000. No, we are going to see the logic of it. Okay, why such high numbers were done? Just simple logic for every individual is like why we use a light year as a unit when we use that unit in astronomy to talk about the distance. Okay, it's the speed of light. How long light would take to travel that distance, and we talk in that terms. We say Arundhati Vasishta, oh, they are like 83 light years away. So light year sounds like a time, but actually they are using year as a distance, as a unit of a distance, like distance traveled by a light in those many years. Okay, significant distance. So it is there, just like we use the light year for a reason. We use miles instead of inches for a reason. It is the same thing here. Nothing is just done for some stupid glory. Now, many of the cultures, they try to create such stupid things. I mean, this just for the, flowering themselves, looking like some substantial stuff. So they think, therefore, the other cultures, the ancient cultures did the same thing. Not true. We'll talk about this. In fact, how, and by the way, there is a lesson for Indians too. Even the Dharmic Indians also, there's a lesson in this. Because we have made, maybe Europeans participated, we don't know that. But I also have evidence, Adityaji, to say that before Europeans came and exploited this Kali Yuga business, Indians have misunderstood Kali Yuga, at least for 1,000 years before Europeans came. So we cannot blame everything on the Europeans. So there is a lesson for in this measurement of time for Indians also, for Hindus also. Okay. So this Mahayuga is divided into 4 subyugas in the ratio of 4:3:2:1, as shown in the figure below. I'm going to show you that. We'll see more of these subyugas later in the article. This is because I'm reading from Anil Narayanji's article. I'm not going to take the article, but this is a time scale quickly. Okay. Now remember what I said. you use time to learn astronomy, and then astronomy you use astronomy to measure time. Astronomy is time. This is like a cycle. It completes a cycle. What you just said about the Truti from Bhagavad Puran is what I'm kind of repeating here. Time taken for two Paramanus, and you read three, that one before that possibly, to collide. Okay, right from that small scale at the bottom there, like a 10 to the power minus 7 is a Truti. And then let's just read a few because you did read them. Renu, okay, then Paramanu, but then Renu, then Lava, okay, then many other things. Then second we have then Paramanu, Vigati, Ghati. In this chart it is shown as a Vigati and Ghati. As you said, the names do change. In other places you will say Nadi and Vinadi. Just like in our times, by the way, that is also from Indian astronomy. Yeah? The Hora that we talk about, like a 60 minutes equivalent, okay. Varahamir says that Hora comes from Ahoratra. Aho means the daytime, the sunlight times. Ratra is the night time when sun sets. From one sunset to another sunrise is the night, or Ratra. From sunrise to sunset is the Aho, Aham, and that together is Ahoratra. And he says that Hora comes from Ahoratra in the context of a sun. That is what is used. And that's why you have that 6 or 7 Nadika or Danda, whatever you use. Why? Because depending on the season of the year, the sun, the daytime, the sunlight time, will change. The sunrise to sunset time will change, and it will vary. But at equator, it will not vary. I mean, equator also, it does vary, but it varies very little. Okay. All right. Okay. So from that, I'm going to show you all the way cycle of a Brahma and all the way to the blink of Bhagwan Shiva. Because remember, okay, finally Shiva is a Kala. The Kala Purusha, the Mrugashirsha that we show, the dancing Nataraja with a Damru in his hand. That is the symbolism of that time. That's blink of a Bhagwan Shiva. We'll see how much that is. But that's see now, as I said, Aditya ji, let's give this episode a title of like the origin or foundations of millions and a billions. I'm saying this is happening. We don't know exactly when, but we can say at least 30,000, 40,000 years ago in an Indian civilization, Hindu civilization, Hinduism, Hindutva civilization, okay, for the likes of Rutgers, weird faculty there. Hinduism, okay, Hindutva. During 40,000 years ago, I want to show you the contrast when Romans and Greeks started thinking of big numbers. So that goes back to the baseless claims of Professor David Pingree of Brown University. Greeks giving astronomy to Indians. What a laughing idea. I mean, it's a great laughing idea. It's a great humor. I have no problem with humor, but it needs to be understood as a humor. That is my point. So going all the way to the day of a Brahma, but also notice few other things. Of course, this one is people are familiar, right? For example, Muhurta people know typically. Ghati also they know in the context of a wedding that comes in the picture. Again, this is not a detailed view of time, so I'm going to avoid the temptation to go into the details of each of these. But Paksha, Masa, Rutu, Ayana, and a year, that Samvatsara, that kind of people are familiar with. So people are familiar in between. If you have to go down, you have to have a microscopic vision for a time. And above this, if you have to go into Mahayuga, like people may know the word Yuga, but if you say how long is a Mahayuga, they will not able to answer. Okay, because then you need a telescopic vision for a time. It is for a distance, but it's also for a time. Okay, Manvantara, then day of Brahma and cycle of Brahma. Let's quickly go through that. So this is a Mahayuga, 4.32 million years. The golden, silver, brass, iron, just for understanding of people here. Krita Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, Kali Yuga. It's very important that we understand these are astronomy purpose calculations. These are done for astronomy purposes, just like miles is done for measuring big distance. Inches and centimeters are for measuring like a height of a human being, height of a table, and so on. And then if you go down, micrometer, is or smaller weights for measuring gold, very small weights, like they have to be very accurate. Micrometers for measuring very small things. Then if you go further down, if you want to study something at the molecular level, like that's how I studied polymers. Okay, literally going down to nanometers range. I don't know, Aditya, if you ever discussed that, but I'm into. I mean, when I did my research, and afterwards I also used for a while transmission electron microscopy, differential scanning calorimetry, tunneling microscopy, and so on. You literally go at the molecular levels. I mean, sometimes I'll just for fun I'll show pictures, like nanometers. You are looking at the structures at the nanometers and angstrom level. Now angstrom, actually, you don't say it. You can expand, you don't say it. But with transmission also it will not go that far. Tunneling will able to go it. But my point is, so these measurements are done for astronomy purposes. Now the lessons for Indians, now Jivan Rao's book has come out and people should read that book too. The lesson for Indians is we have to get rid of our dogma to think that these scales are used for our itihasa writing of Mahabharat and Ramayana. They are not. Okay, somewhere this mistake happened, definitely before Western Europeans came to us. And I know, by the way, where that more likely that mistake happened, but I'm not going to discuss that here. And then we have ourselves got into a royal mess of ourselves, a royal mess. And we are so dogmatic, like the other episode that we did, where people, we talk about the rigid Sanskrit scholars, and then other rigid peoples go by the book. Yeah, go by the book, but also study Patanjali Yoga Sutra so that you can imbibe the Viveka to understand what they are. These scales are extremely useful, but they have nothing to do with the chronology of our history. Again, that's not the subject today, but so let me continue. So 4.32 million years, why were they done? There is a solid astronomy basis, astronomy foundation for this. Quickly, I will say, summarize in one line. They have, astronomers, great sages of India, created this 4.32 million years of Mahayuga so that the orbital periods of all the celestial bodies, of course, the sun, moon, but sun is the reference here, that 4.32 million solar years. So sun they studied very well, and then using that as a basis, okay, try to find out the orbital periods of all the planets, but then use that information to know more about many other fine parameters. That is not a scope of this discussion, but things like apogee, perigee, like aphelion, perihelion, and many other interesting, important, useful astronomical quantities or the nodes of the moon, nodes of the planets, their orbital period. In order to find this, I'm going to give you an example here. They created these bigger scales that are not to be confused for chronology purposes, itihasa purposes, like Ramayana happening million years ago and something. No, that's neither a Vivek, that's neither a Pramanya. And if it is a Shraddha, it is a Shraddha of a Tamasi kind. So why did they create 4.32 million years? So that they can show in 4.32 million years, it is the solar years, which is to say solar sun's rotations around the earth as seen from the earth. No confusion. Indians had no confusion who is rotating around who. That will be another digression. I can pull the text from 13th century, long before Copernicus, and show what they are saying. This was not just a knowledge to knowledgeable people. This was a common sense, everyday knowledge to all Indians, that the sun is stable and it is the earth that is rotating. Even in 13th century, Jnaneshwara uses that as a upaman, as a metaphor. And people only, you use only that thing as a upaman and an udaharana and a drishtanta that is known to everybody. Okay, but I digress. So this was used so that we can accurately say the period of planet. So what it means is 4.32 million solar years In that time, moon will do those many rotations in full numbers, in whole numbers. Mars would do those many rotations. Mercury would do those many rotations. And that allowed them, by taking the ratio, multiplied it by the length of the year, solar year, 365.2478. That allowed them to accurately, precisely represent the orbital numbers. That's why the Mahayuga was created. Okay, but something else here I want to show you. The next thing they did is they took a Mahayuga. This is one Mahayuga of 4.32 million years. And what did they say? 71 Mahayugas. Actually, the number Aditya ji is 71.4 or 71.42. It is there in Indian astronomy. Just for ordinary language, we say 71. 71 Mahayugas makes one Manvantara. Now remember this word, Aditya Manvantara. I'm making a new conjecture. I'm saying million comes from Manvantara. Okay, think of, or of course, the Mahayuga. You can say from Mahayuga is also sufficient. A very high number. Keep that in mind when we get to the etymology of a million and a billion. A very high number, Mahayuga, Maha. From there, the million came. Okay, 71 of such Mahayuga, and to be precise, 71.4 or 71.42 gave us one Kalpa. Sorry, one Manvantar, forgive me. Okay, gave us one Manvantar. Manu. Okay, and so just let me tell you why even they went for that. And now then they said, okay, so we got a Manvantar, which corresponds to about 300 million years. Okay, and what is the significance of that? Literally, if you take the word manvan antar, manva, okay, mana, think of mana and antara, as if like new species, because every species has a different level of mind, different level of evolution of a mind, evolution of an intellect. As if like, I mean, this is speculative, but is it as if like Dr. Anil Narayanji has posed that as a question, not like a conclusion? Could it be like, does it mean, are they trying to tell us that every 300 million years another species is formed, or another significant evolution takes place? I mean, that is something for validation. We need to test it. Nobody's saying this is a proved thing or anything. Based on the word manvantara, antar is literally a distance between the mind. Okay, like a tangible, a quantum distance between the mind. Is that the significance? But astronomically speaking, 71.4 has a perfect number. If it was interactive, I would have asked the students, like, what does 71.4 represent? That is the number of years in which the precession of the Earth's axis, that shifts by 1 degree. The sidereal, the background nakshatra system, shifts, okay, by 1 degree with respect to the point of tropical, like with the equinoxes. That number is 71.4. So none of these are arbitrary numbers. And now something more beautiful, how fascinating, how sophisticated these guys were with the math. Then you see, what do they do? That is also been misunderstood, I would say, even in the Indian tradition. Now they took that Manvantara, and how many Manvantaras are there? 14 Manvantaras. If you take 14 Manvantaras, they add up to the Kalpa. Okay, so from the Manvantara is then built the great astronomical period, the Kalpa, composed of 14 odd Manvantaras, totaling to, see, why 14? Remember, Mahayuga is 4.32 million years. And from there, Mahayuga 4.32 million years to Kalpa is a 4.32 billion years. It is a few order of magnitude change. But they did 14 to adjust that to again 4.32 billion. Sorry, from million Mahayuga to billion. Now, are they just doing this to impress someone? Absolutely not. Now, those people who do these kind of things, the elitism, you can call, modern day word elitism, the how people dress and how people talk and how people smile and all that thing, is to impress others. Here, these guys don't give a hoot. They are not doing to impress. They are extremely practical, extremely pragmatic. Do you know why that Kalpa? Why is the need for a 4.32 billion years? You can be assured. That's why read Surya Siddhanta. There is nothing there that is just, we may not understand it today. The portions might be lost. We have lost the knowledge, even what to make sense of it. The words may have a different meaning, but nothing superficial, nothing for the glory. It is practical and pragmatic. The Kalpa, just like the Mahayuga, was designed so that the orbital periods of the Graha can be given with accuracy. Guess what? The Mahayuga unit, 4.32 million years, was not sufficiently high to explain some of the other astronomy phenomenon, such as the orbital period of the nodes of a planets and few other astronomy parameters. For that, they design a kalpa. Now, that is not always to be taken literally. It is meant for a specific purpose. We cannot just take that again for a history, okay? Again for chronology. We cannot do that. Now, we may use the scale, that is a different story, but simply therefore jumping into the conclusion is not correct. Okay. So, Kalpa is a big significance, and the scales that we're talking are now finally the Big Bang is catching up with these scales. And Carl Sagan discusses this in Cosmos, but I will say, even when he discusses that in Cosmos and admits that the only civilization whose timescales come close to modern cosmology are Hindu civilization, he still have a derisive attitude towards Hindu civilization because he thinks it's a coincidence. Late Carl Sagan, great scientist from Cornell, what he did not realize that none of this is a coincidence. Okay, this is a design. This is a design thinking to solve practical problems. Anyways, now you take that Kalpa, which is a day of a Brahma, and equal is to that is a night of a Brahma, and then you can look at the time frame. So 1000. So first 71.4 they took from Mahayuga to Manvantar, and then they adjust very creatively 14 Manvantaras to make it a Kalpa. Now, see in beautifully what they did. Therefore, they adjusted one Mahayuga is a Mahayuga, 1000 Mahayugas is a Kalpa. Remember this decimal system. Many people think zero is the biggest contribution of India to the world. And frankly, Adityaji, in academia, in the Western academia, there are books written with the sole purpose to show how zero did not come from India. Okay, I forgot the guy's name. Book is there. And if you see the reviews of that book, oh, what a great book or something. What nonsense. The whole attempt in that book is to show how zero did not come from India and how everybody knew about zero. If they would have known about zero, they wouldn't have been scared of a zero. The Romans and the Greek and Western Europeans were scared of zero for a long time. We are talking 1,000 years until 1,000 years ago. It took them a long time to finally accept zero. But other place, they want to pretend that they invented, they discovered, and not give credit where it is due, which is India. My point is, people think zero is the greatest contribution, like Einstein and those people do accept zero is the greatest contribution of India. Yes, it is, but even a bigger one is the decimal system. Okay, just imagine doing multiplication or division using Roman numbers. Okay, people will start sweating and give up. Okay, and these people or these modern academics claiming that kind of very rudimentary and backward and elementary and primitive mathematics of Romans and Greek, and they did all kinds of these complex calculation. Not only that, they taught to Indians. Okay, it is really a good humor. Okay, so now what happens after Kalpa? Do we stop at Kalpa? Not really. However, what I would say, at least based on a limited knowledge I have, and even Dr. Anil Narayananji is making that point, just for the sake of completion, they continue beyond Kalpa. Okay, and that's not to discount it. But as far as the astronomy purpose is concerned, there is no additional astronomy purpose here. There may be a cosmology purpose, but not astronomy, like in terms of the calculation. So quickly, I want to show you that last calculation and we'll stop. So now so we started with the day of Brahma, and then it's assumed that Brahma lives for 100 years. Okay, Jivet Sharadashatam. Congrats. By the way, greetings to you, Aditya ji, on your birthday. Jivet Sharadashatam. That 100 years is like Brahma's age. But of course, Brahma's time frame. Remember, Brahma's one day is like a kalpa. In fact, one day is a half a kalpa because day and then the night, ahoratra. And then you take that as a year of a Brahma. Okay, and then Brahma lives for 100 years and so on and so forth. It goes to trillions and trillions of years. And then if you take the life of a Brahma for 100 years, that comes to 311 trillion years. And then it says, you know what? that is just a blink of an eye of a Mahadeva Shiva Shambhu, who is a Kal personified. So you can go all of that, and it is worth learning because it is useful in everyday life. It is useful in sciences. It's useful in understanding our cosmos. But at the end of the day, you have to surrender to Shiva. you know, Finally we say, oh, this is all fascinating. I think I understood time. And then now, when I finally felt like maybe I understood time and understood a day of a Brahma and a life of a Brahma, and somebody comes and tells me, by the way, that whole life of a Brahma is blink of an eye of a Mahadeva, Sadashiva, Shambhu. Okay. So now just last two slides. So fortunately, because even in this etymology, I don't know if the etymology online does it. They do collect the material from outside. You will find a Western bias there because, they will, if they find a word that comes from Sanskrit, most cases, they will say, oh, this comes from a pie. Okay, the pie doesn't exist. It's a fraud in the broad daylight. But they will say there was a language called Proto-Indo-European. They are so hesitant. Finally, they have no option. Therefore, they use the word Indo. They would have loved to call it Proto-European. Why they don't call it Proto-European? Why they have to call Proto-Indian? Because if they drop the Indian, there is no science of linguistics. Okay, the science of linguistics, as far as the Western Europe is concerned, Western world is concerned, started with a Panini. They discovering Panini. And Panini, by the way, we know is not the first grammarian. He's a relatively late grammarian. He's after Mahabharat. But Vyasadeva and Valmiki are writing in a Chanda, Shabda, and a Kavya and a meters long before Panini. Okay. Anyways, back to the million and a billion. Million, do pay attention, guys. Okay. And you can just go, literally go to Google and type etymology of a million. You're going to get this. Then type etymology of a billion, and you're going to get the next slide I'm going to show you. And that's the last slide. Okay. 10, 100,000, 1,000, etc. Of how long they started using it in the Western world, say late 14th century, specific to million we are talking, but something I don't want to read through everything. This is a large number, but something that I'm so glad that etymology also, online etymology did a honest job, unlike the professor writing on a zero and how everybody around the world knew zero and it's not India's contribution. Unlike that kind of a fraud, here they have shown honesty. In the West, it was used mainly by mathematicians until 16th century, they're saying, but India, with its love of large numbers, had names before 3rd century. Now, that 3rd century comes because of, again, the Western Indologist limitation and the whole world beginning. Western Europe thought, including Einstein and Kepler, they thought the whole universe began, the world began only 6,000 years ago. So that thinking is embedded in thinking that India started 3rd century. No, for numbers well beyond a billion, we just saw. Okay, so I'm so glad at least they recognize. Usually they will not recognize. They will only go to this pi nonsense. Okay, the ancient Greeks, very important. Again, going back to Brown University, the professor of exact sciences, David Pingree, and he claiming Indian astronomy coming from Greeks. The ancient Greeks had no name for a number greater than 10,000. The Romans for none higher than 100,000, a million, a million. They will say in Italy. In Latin, would have been decius centena millia, literally 10,100,000. Okay, million to one as a type of long odds attested, blah blah blah. But at least here they acknowledge. And let me quickly show you the billion. Now, where does that word billion comes from? I mean, there are many speculations, but think of a by 2 million. Now, of course, 2 million is not a million. Actually, 1,000 million is a billion. So where does that 2 come from? Okay, it's not mentioned anywhere here, or at least if it was mentioned, I did not notice it. But if you go back to, again, Indian astronomy, Indian science of time, Indian science of trigonometry, which very much built because of astronomy, what do you see? Like a geometric progression, like the other number, just like there is a Fibonacci sequence. What is a Fibonacci sequence? It's a Pingala sequence, right? Similarly, if you see the geometric progression, okay, so 1, 2, 2, 4, 4, 16, 16, 32, like to the power 2 to the power 1, to the 2 to the power n. 2 to the power 1 is 2, 2 to the power 2 is 4, 2 to the power 3 is 16, and so on. So in that case, it is an order of magnitude or a geometric progression. And if you take this in the gaps of 1,000, that's the way it is done, like a simple year, and then God's year 360. So that's one order of magnitude. And then taking it to the 1,000, that's another order of magnitude. Then you say a million done by, but not a linear by, not 2 million, but a order of magnitude or two orders of magnitude. Then you see 1,000 Mahayuga becoming one Kalpa, 1,000 Mahayuga becoming Kalpa. So million, think of as a Mahayuga becoming a Kalpa now. Now, what is a Kalpa? I'm just speculating it here, guys, after that for the B. It's a day of a Brahma. Brahma, take that as a B, just for humor, I'm saying. But Mahayuga is a million. Think of that. We are talking in millions, 4.32 millions. Now, as soon as we get to Brahma, as far as our measurement system is concerned, measuring day of a Brahma, we are talking of a billion. 4.32 billion years is a Kalpa. By the way, that's my speculation. So don't confuse what is a factual and what is my interpretation and some fun. With that, I want to stop sharing. Aditya ji, we can conclude.
Amazing, जो आप what you described. See, the thing is, names of the individual variables, और आपने जो 308 million का जो calculation दिया, that is phenomenal. क्योंकि क्योंकि time calculation is everything. We use time in sadhana, we use time in और हर चीज का एक regulated रहता है कि like मतलब 108 माला भी करना है तो 5 से 7 मिनट के बीच में कोई भी मंत्र होगा।
7 मिनट लगते हैं हरे कृष्ण करना है तो, राइट?
हाँ, और वो सबका कैलकुलेशन मंत्र छोटा भी होगा तो 5 मिनट से कम नहीं होना चाहिए।
करेक्ट करेक्ट।
उसका भी लिमिट्स है। और जो आपने बताया, जैसे आपने बताया त्रुटि, 3 त्रिश्रेणु को मर्ज जब होता है तो उसमें समय लगता है 1/1687.5 सेकेंड्स। मतलब 0.000 कैलकुलेट कर रहे कोई भी तो यू अंडरस्टैंड। और 100 त्रुटि इज 0.06 सेकेंड।
करेक्ट।
विच इज कॉल्ड वेदा।
करेक्ट।
और तो इट्स ए माइक्रो कैलकुलेशन।
या उसमें प्राण है क्या? आपका लिस्ट में प्राण है? बिकॉज द वर्ड स्लाइटली चेंज। प्राण है, यू नो, सो जैसा प्राणायाम का जो प्राण हम बोलते हैं, एक श्वास लेना।
तो निमेश है, निमेश है,
निमेश है। हाँ,
तो
दैट्स व्हाई आई सेड, हाँ, द नेम चेंजेस, लाइक नाड़ी घटी थोड़ा बदलता है, बट माय पॉइंट इज, छोटे बच्चों को ऐसा एक सिंपल टेस्ट है, जैसा आप चैंटिंग की बात की, जप की बात की, छोटे, इफ यू आस्क स्मॉल चाइल्ड, आई मीन समबडी हु कैन काउंट द नंबर्स, टू से एट अ नॉर्मल पेस, यू नो, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, that is called a prana as a unit. and these people have validated that as a calibrated, you know, with the different children. There are experiments performed in a gurukula. I mean, I'm familiar with this, but you know, until the research comes out, you know, it takes years. That's why I don't like that peer reviewed stuff also. It takes so long.
Yeah. You know, you and I are disqualified by the mainstream academic
and I'm so happy. I was not disqualified. I was removed. Okay, removed from it's a Google group, Bharatiya Vidvat Parishad. It's a Sanskrit people, you know, Sanskrit experts group around the world. You know, I was removed, and you know, then there's these trolls. They were feeling so happy that we removed Nilesh Oak, and I was also very happy. So everyone was happy. I'm saying, thank God. In fact, I went there 3 times at 3 different locations, different times in last say 10 plus years. And I went all 3 times. I went because somebody invited me, saying, you must join this group. Please come. All 3 times. And then, of course, I was always active, but did not have a need to go. Then somebody said, hey, I have posted some articles. Some people are objecting to it. Can you come and respond? Another professor asked me to do that. That's why the last time, before they removed me, okay, ceremoniously or unceremoniously, removed me from Bharatiya Vidvat Parishad group on a Google. I'm so glad and happy. So that, yeah, we are disqualified, and we should feel so good about it that we are disqualified, you know.
So भगवान राम ने, like we discussed that, भगवान राम ने 2 घड़ी में 14,000 राक्षस मारे। In two ghadi he killed 2000 rakshas.
Yeah,
Now that is ek ghadi is
like a
around.
murta, like a one murta possibly, right? Two ghati would be one murta or no?
No, actually you're right, because 3645 second divided by is around 3645 second is 2 hours. No,
Yeah. So 48 minutes is one murta. Two murta would be something like that, whatever
no,
it is comes to. I mean,
दो घड़ी बोला था, तो दो घड़ी
okay,
should be less than मुहूर्त.
right.
So one ghadi should be actually, yes, you're right. Do ghadi should be around one muhurta, which is
Correct.
3645 second.
24 minutes. So 24 minutes is a ghati or ghati. 48 minutes is a murta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then do ghadi is so I think it should be nadika or danda should
Huh.
be it should be ek one ghadi.
Correct, correct, something like.
Yeah.
And again, in the Kavya, again, Rupa Bhattiji keeps on reminding me. Sometime I will say, oh, well, that might be said in a generic sense. Yes, we say, ki, oh, Aditya Ji and myself, we chatted for 2 hours. In reality, it could be 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that is actually can happen in a Kavya, even in the history writing. But Rupa Ji always keeps on reminding me, no, 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 don't take it lightly, she said. Just take it literally. And first analyze, validate, and see if it matches. And that is such a powerful advice that Rupaji has. Because I used to say, no, maybe it's a embellishment in a kavya. She said, don't take it as embellishment, at least not as a first approximation.
Well,
Anyways, I'm
like
I'm
for
done. We can stop,
yeah,
by the way.
one will just finish one
Sure,
thing.
sure, please.
Like
Yeah.
क्षणत क्रमयो संयम द्विविवेकजम ज्ञानम. ठीक है, एक
Hmm.
ये हो गया विच इज संयम ऑन क्षण एंड इट्स सीक्वेंस एंड कंटिन्यूटी क्रमयो results in knowledge with vivek. Okay,
Beautiful. Beautiful.
this is done. And vivek, we all know logical reasoning through Vedic wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is the sutra again? Can you read it
Sutra
slowly?
is Vibhuti is 52.
And what is the sutra? Can you read that sutra again?
Chanat Chanat Kramayo
Yeah.
Sanyama the Vivekajam Jnanam.
Okay. So Viveka is also there. Okay. Viveka Jnana comes.
हाँ,
Beautiful.
विवेक ज्ञान
Beautiful.
comes. अच्छा,
Beautiful.
and next one you will love it even more.
Hmm.
जाति लक्षण देशैर अत्यान्वेन छेद तुल्य योस्ततः प्रतिपत्ति means
Hmm.
knowledge from Vivek Gyan that you obtain on Sanyam on Chana
Yeah.
helps a yogi discern jati means a birth, जहाँ पे birth हुआ है, लक्षण characteristics and behavior, and desh of anyone, even
Hmm.
if they appear to be similar or comparable or non-distinguishable.
Yeah. Very good. So since you open Aditiji can of worms, now I want you to go Vibhuti Pad. Okay, quickly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There, just and don't have to read 1, 2, 3, but go
Yeah.
to Dhyana Dharana Samadhi. That is equal to Sanyam. You can go there. Go to Vibhuti Pad 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
And then 4 or 5. Read 4 and 5. Tasya Bhumishu
Yes.
Viniyogaha.
You are very well read. So, so Desha Bandhasya Chittasya Dharana. Binding
Yeah.
the mind to a place is called Dharana.
Right.
And then continuous undeviated focus of mind, Tatra Pratyaye Katanata Dhyanam. So the
Yeah.
continuous undeviated focus of mind and on that Desh is called Dhyana.
Correct.
And then only the object of dhyana shines forth and the identification of self becomes diluted. This stage is called samadhi.
हाँ. No, the reason this is important is लोगों को क्या लगता है कि आंख बंद करके कुछ तो बैठने का means samadhi. See, this is also how people think. Yes, it is part of samadhi. That's how you focus and all that. But this is a definition of samadhi, what you just read,
And then trayam ekatra samyama. So
Yes.
when the three dharana, dhyan, samadhi are practiced together for one objective,
हाँ.
that is called samyam.
Correct. And now people think हो गया. People think now it's done. But read the next one. Tasya bhumi, right?
Tas uske pehle hai tajaya pragya loka. Then
Correct.
the radiance of pragya,
Yes.
who have attained freedom from birth, old age, disease, and death, lights.
Yeah. Yes.
You know,
And the next one?
the next one is tasya bhumishu vinyogaha.
तस्य भूमिषु विनियोग भाई इसका सबका यू हैव टू मेक यूज ऑफ इट फॉर द वेल बीइंग ऑफ ह्यूमैनिटी, वेल बीइंग ऑफ ऑल लिविंग एंटिटीज, प्राणी मात्र के लिए.
या एंड भूमि का मतलब यहाँ पे दो है, प्राणी मात्र भी है, संयम is practiced in stages, मतलब भूमिका है.
Correct, correct,
Stages. So
correct.
then the vibhuti starts after that.
Because it's see you, stages also because of objective na one particular objective आप करोगे then you will do another,
Correct,
not
correct,
like everything together. And
correct.
see stages na आगे का stages देखो, if
Yeah.
you go 6 7 8 you will, I mean we have to stop at some point. What
Yeah.
is it? Bhumi, right? What is that?
So Trayam Antaranga Purvebhya, the threefold inner limbs or Sanyam
हाँ.
are different from previous ones. But the Purvebhya
हाँ.
means Yam Niyama Asana Pranayam Pratyahar.
Right. No. Then we have to
And
go to
then,
like, just for fun, if you want to go, you can jump to 26 in the same chapter, 26, 27, 28.
yeah,
Okay.
that's
Bhumit
why
Jnanam Surya Sanyamar.
that's why I
26.
enjoyed talking to you because you know what you're talking. So Sanyam
ये
on
भगवत कथा
Surya
है अपनी, ये हमारी कृष्ण कथा है.
Bhuvanam Jnanam Surya Sanyama.
Right.
Sanyam on Surya leads to information of all lokas and beyond.
Right.
Yeah.
Chandre Tara Vyuhat
Sanyam on
Jnanam. Next
Chandra
one.
reveals knowledge of the view of stars. The
Yeah.
Chandra Tara view Jnanam.
और सबसे
Then,
आगे वाला ध्रुव तत् गति ज्ञानम.
yeah, Sanyam on Tadidhyanam. So Sanyam on Dhruva Tara leads to knowledge of motion of all
Yeah.
stars.
Yeah. And now, just for the last one, I want to also join at least for a minute the elite crowd, just say, oh, well, go to page number this and so on. So if you go to the very first Samadhi path, because see, go to the very first Samadhi path and go
Right.
to number 7, 8, and 9.
Right.
Those three basically tell you the entire Vijnan, modern science. Okay. Number 7, आप 7 पढ़िए.
7 on the Samadhi path. Right? Just give me a second.
We'll begin with Pratyaksha.
Yeah. Number 7. So my book is also getting tested now.
Correct है कि नहीं?
Pratyaksha Anugamana Pramani. Pratyaksha Anuman and Agama are the 3 Pramana.
Correct. Pratyaksha Anumana Agama Pramanani. What is the next one? This is where I would tell you, I mean, I started the Pradnya and Shraddha and Pradnya series, and I say, no other Mahabharata researcher around is going to open the mouth. That is because they are all into number 8. Mithya, what is that? Viparyayo Mithya Jnanam
Mithya Jnanam Durta Pratishtham.
If you don't follow number 7, then you are following the number 8, and it's going to lead to Mithya Jnanam, Mithya Jnan, Sattology, Mythology, just see. And what is the next one? That is also majority of the even so-called Indic, so-called Dharmic sounding researchers are guilty. Number 9 padhiye aap, read number 9.
And number 9 is Shabda Jnana Dupati Vastu Shunya Vikalpa.
Even today, what we saw, Jatayuji is another one, for example. Okay, person is making a claim, Shabda Jnananupati, Vastu Shunyo. When you ask for evidence, there is a zero evidence, Vastu Shunyo. It leads to confusion, it leads to delusion. Shabda Jnananupati, Vastu Shunyo Vikalpa. Again, this is not about Jatayu. There are hundreds of people into this bucket.
That's right.
Anyways,
Vikalpa has a totally different meaning in Patanjali Yoga Sutra because generally we think of Vikalpa as an alternative. It is not alternative.
No.
Vikalpa is not the same as Viparyaya because Vikalpa is purely a mental imagination while Viparyaya is based on false information. Correct.
Very subtle, nice differences there. And it leads to confusion. It leads to delusion of that individual who does that, like, speculates without evidence. And nothing wrong in speculation, but you have to say that this is a speculation. Like, last May I bola bhi like millions and billions. I said million might have come from Mahayuga. It is my speculation. There is no evidence for it. Just a high number, or billion came maybe because of a Brahma, the Kalpa is 4.32 billion and relates to Brahma. But that is my speculation. I'm not saying, oh, no, that's what it is or that's how it came. Nothing like that. So, okay with speculation. You cannot pretend that speculation has suddenly become an established Siddhanta. Then there is a problem.
And without this vritti, Vikalpa vritti, most creative energies of humans won't be there.
Yeah. And see, Patanjali, when the training Samadhipada is saying, hey, these are the vritti and you have to avoid because yoga chitta vritti nirodha.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But that is like saying, just like Pablo Picasso said, when you are learning an art, you have to follow all the rules. Do not deviate from a single rule. Once you become an expert, throw all the rules away.
That's right.
right? Anyways, we can stop, Aditya ji, but that was a wonderful one, great book, and I look forward to reading it.
I'm going to send it to you as soon as I get the copy. As soon as I receive the copy, this is the author's copy only.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you so much for all the viewers. You saw how much is interest is there, and that is me and Nilesh Oak's enjoyment. This we love what we do,
Correct.
and nothing more funny than us for this other than this one. So please do share, like, and subscribe, and let us know your feedback. I've been asking for subscription because many people feel pity on me that we don't have enough subscribers. So, but our viewership is good. So thank you so much for subscribing and let me know your feedback. Namaste.
Thank you, Aditya ji. Namaskar.